Did you know that even Max Verstappen has started to lose patience with his car this season? And no wonder. The RB21 has been labeled one of the most difficult cars to handle on the entire 2025 Formula One grid. Let me know your opinion in the comments. Do you think Red Bull is throwing away its dominance because of the car? Is the team really in crisis? What's making the RB21 so unpredictable? In this video, we'll explain why the RB21, Red Bull's car for the 2025 season, has become a real headache, even for Max Verstappen himself. Red Bull has entered an unexpectedly difficult stage of the 2025 season. Despite having Max Verstappen fighting at the top of the driver's standings, the team is far from maintaining the dominance it has accustomed to in Formula One in previous years. The Dutchman is just 1 point behind championship leader Oscar Piastri, which shows that he continues to extract the maximum from the car. However, this individual performance contrasts with the team's results in the Constructors' Championship, where the situation is alarming. Currently, Red Bull is 172 points behind McLaren, the new dominant team on the grid. This gap not only highlights the rise of its rivals, but also the internal weaknesses of a project that, on paper, was supposed to continue winning. One of the most obvious problems is the inability of the second driver to score points consistently. Yuki Tsunoda, who replaced Liam Lawson after just 2 races, has only managed 7 points in the last 6 rounds. In such a competitive championship, that represents a significant disadvantage. Meanwhile, McLaren and Ferrari have made steady strides. Both teams not only have more balanced cars, but also 2 drivers capable of squeezing the most out of them every weekend. Red Bull, on the other hand, relies almost entirely on Verstappen's talent. This combination of factors has left the team in an unusual position, struggling to stay at the top without a dominant car. The big question, then, is what's wrong with the RB21? Why is such a successful team now being overtaken by its main competitors? The RB21 has been one of the biggest technical disappointments Red Bull has experienced in recent years. What was meant to be an evolution of a successful RB20 ended up becoming an unpredictable, demanding, and in many ways, untamable car. Although at first glance it may look like a fast car, its performance is conditioned by such a delicate balance that it makes it extremely difficult to handle, even for experienced drivers. The car's main problem lies in its unstable handling. The RB21 operates within an extremely narrow performance window. This means that if the driver doesn't achieve perfect setup, or if the track conditions aren't ideal, the car simply doesn't respond as it should. This extreme sensitivity has meant that any slightest inaccuracy, whether in braking, corner entry, or traction upon exit, can translate into a significant loss of time. Max Verstappen has managed to adapt in part to these demands thanks to his driving ability and experience with complex cars, but even he has begun to show signs of frustration. In several interviews, he has stated that the car is unpredictable and that his lack of confidence in certain phases of the lap prevents him from attacking as he used to. In his own words, the RB21 has gone from being a dominant machine to a complicated car requiring near-perfect driving lap after lap. The situation worsens when we analyze what is happening with the team's other drivers. Liam Lawson, for example, was unable to adapt and was replaced after just 2 races. Yuki Tsunoda, his replacement, has also struggled, and although he didn't find the car particularly difficult in the simulator, the story on track has been very different. This reinforces the idea that the problem lies in the way the car reacts to the reality of the circuit, and not in the theoretical or simulated data. The demands placed on the RB21 are so high that it forces the team to choose between 2 paths: develop an aggressive setup designed for Verstappen, with as much performance as possible, or sacrifice some of that potential to give Tsunoda a more predictable and manageable car. This latter option has begun to gain traction within the team, as they need both cars to score points. But that balance between performance and handling is difficult to achieve and reflects the complexity of the car's current design. Red Bull engineers have acknowledged that the car requires pinpoint precision in every parameter. Any misalignment in the front wing, suspension, or weight distribution drastically affects the car's behavior. This lack of tolerance for small changes is holding back the team's development and forcing them to work almost blindly between races, trying to figure out how to adapt the car to each track. The great irony is that this same team has been able to create some of the most dominant cars in recent history. But on this occasion, the pursuit of an extreme aerodynamic advantage seems to have taken them too far. The RB21 is fast, yes, but only under near-perfect conditions. And in Formula One, those conditions can't always be guaranteed. One of the biggest headaches for Red Bull this year has been the disconnect between the front and rear of the car. The RB21 doesn't respond coherently during the different phases of the corner. This means that what happens under braking and on corner entry doesn't behave the same as what happens at the apex or exit. For the drivers, this creates a constant feeling of uncertainty. They don't know exactly how the car will behave on the next move. This lack of confidence forces them to drive cautiously, unable to fully exploit the speed. And in a category as tight as Formula One, this translates into very valuable tenths of a second lost lap after lap. The most critical point is corner entry. Exactly where the driver needs precision and confidence, the RB21 fails. There isn't enough grip at the front end, and this means the drivers can't launch the car aggressively into the apex. Instead of attacking the corner, they have to overcalculate each movement. Christian Horner, the team principal, has said it clearly: the big problem lies in the mid-corner entry phase. And until that is resolved, the car will not be able to offer a stable base for the drivers to push without fear. Another complicating factor is tire management. The RB21 has a clear tendency to overheat faster than the rest of the field. When the tires enter that critical temperature zone, they lose grip and degrade much sooner than expected. This behavior has been a constant in the first races of the year. Max Verstappen made it clear, "We are even worse on tires than last year." It's very complicated. These words are no small feat coming from a driver who has been able to adapt to almost all types of cars. In races with high temperatures, such as Bahrain, the consequences have been evident. Verstappen only managed 6th place, and much of that drop was due to excessive tire wear. The RB21 also struggles on circuits with uneven surfaces. The car's stability over bumps and curbs is poor. This technical limitation prevents drivers from attacking with confidence on urban tracks or on tracks with many undulations. They tried to correct it during the winter, but the results have not been sufficient. The car continues to react abruptly in these conditions, forcing drivers to adopt a much more conservative driving line. And in a sport where winning is achieved by thousandths of a second, not being able to mount a curb or attack a corner at its most aggressive point can make all the difference. Each of these technical problems, on their own, would be cause for concern. But in the case of the RB21, they all combine at once. The lack of balance, overheated tires, and instability on curbs create an explosive cocktail that has put the most dominant team of recent years in jeopardy. This isn't a bad one-off design. It's a technical concept that has proven much more difficult to control than they expected. One of the most delicate points in the RB21 crisis lies in something that isn't visible during the races, but that directly influences the car's performance: the wind tunnel. Red Bull has been experiencing a worrying disconnect between the data it obtains in its simulation center and the actual results it achieves on the track. What works well in theory doesn't behave the same when the car is in full competition. Christian Horner has described this situation very clearly. He said it's like telling time with two different clocks. In other words, the technical information Red Bull gathers in its wind tunnel doesn't match what actually happens on the tracks. This lack of correlation is directly affecting the car's development. The team makes design decisions based on simulations that, once applied, don't perform as expected. The wind tunnel Red Bull uses is located in Bedford. It's a facility over 70 years old, which has been updated several times, but appears to have reached its limit. Although this same tunnel was used successfully in the 2022 and 2023 seasons, it is now failing to provide reliable data. The complexity of the RB21 has exposed its limitations, leading to misinterpretations that have had direct consequences on the track. Max Verstappen has been very clear on this point. While acknowledging that the wind tunnel isn't perfect, he has also made it clear that it isn't the only culprit. According to him, the team won titles using the same tool, indicating that the real problem may also lie in the direction the car's development took. There is something off about the RB21's technical philosophy, and that goes beyond a simple infrastructure failure. Because of this situation, Red Bull has had to change the way it works. They can no longer blindly rely on their simulations. They now rely much more on data collected during race weekends. This means a slower, more reactive process, with less room for long-term planning. As Horner explained, it's the track data that's driving the solutions, and that, for a team that has always worked with millimeter precision, represents a huge limitation. The wind tunnel, once a strategic advantage, has now become a piece of equipment that no longer offers any guarantees. And in a championship as tight as this year's, any deviation between theory and practice can be very costly. For years, Max Verstappen has been Red Bull's differentiating factor. His ability to adapt to any car, no matter how complex, has made him a pillar of the team. But this season, even he has begun to show his discomfort. Although he continues to compete at the highest level, his statements reflect a growing tension. After the Bahrain Grand Prix, he didn't hesitate to say that the team had turned a dominant car into a monster. That phrase sums up the level of frustration that's starting to set in, even for someone as meticulous as he is. Verstappen knows how to squeeze the performance out of a car, but what he's made clear is that the RB21 demands too much. Every qualifying session, every stint in the race, requires absolute concentration and execution with no margin for error. And when that constant effort doesn't translate into dominant results, mental wear and tear sets in. Although he continues to score points and wins, he no longer does so from the comfort of a superior car. Now he's fighting lap after lap to maintain pace against rivals like McLaren and Ferrari, who have more stable and predictable machines. On the other side is Yuki Tsunoda, who took over as second driver after Liam Lawson's early departure. Unlike Verstappen, Tsunoda hasn't been able to show consistency or solid results. In the simulator, the car didn't seem as challenging. He said as much before his debut at Suzuka. He didn't find it particularly difficult to drive. But the track, as always, ended up telling a different story. In real-life conditions, with the pressure of the weekend and the unpredictable behavior of the RB21, the story changed completely. The difference between the simulator and the track exposes another problem for the team: the lack of correlation between its virtual tools and reality. Tsunoda, as a driver, needs confidence. But if the car changes its behavior from lap to lap, that confidence disappears. And when that happens, errors appear and performance drops. Therefore, Red Bull has had to make a difficult decision: adjust the car's setup to make it more manageable, even if it means losing some raw performance. Christian Horner explained it clearly. Max is capable of extracting lap times that no other driver achieves with this car. But that ability isn't shared. None of his teammates have managed to come close consistently. That's why they've worked on giving Tsunoda a more calm car, one that doesn't surprise him with unexpected reactions. It's a strategic change. Lose a few tenths per lap to gain stability and, hopefully, points in each race. What's happening with the drivers reflects the underlying problem with the RB21. It's a car that works only in Verstappen's hands, and not even he feels completely comfortable. That dependence is dangerous, especially when the team needs to score with both cars to compete in the Constructors' Championship. The RB21 doesn't forgive mistakes, and when neither the simulator, nor the technical data, nor the setup can offer consistent solutions, the room for improvement is reduced. The team is trying to adapt. It has made setup changes, introduced updates, and adjusted its approach. But so far, the gap with its main rivals remains evident. The big question is whether these modifications will be enough to turn things around, or whether Red Bull will have to continue relying on what Verstappen can achieve on his own. What we're seeing with the RB21 isn't just a complicated phase. It's a profound transformation of the car that, far from simplifying things, has brought the team to a critical point. Red Bull, which for years commanded respect on the grid with its technical dominance, is now facing a car that demands too much, delivers little, and challenges even its star driver. What seemed like a simple evolutionary adjustment compared to the RB20 ended up unleashing a storm of problems. From poor balance to tire management, to correlation errors in the wind tunnel, every technical aspect has contributed to this car being a threat to its own results. Max Verstappen remains the factor that keeps the team in the fight, but relying solely on his talent isn't sustainable. And when even he begins to show signs of frustration, it's clear that something profound must change. Now the focus turns to the upcoming races. Red Bull has little margin for error and many decisions to make. They're not just trying to save a season, they're also figuring out how to be ready for 2026, when the new rules come into effect. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Red Bull can make up for lost ground? Or are we seeing the end of their dominant era in Formula One?